All right, the name of tonight's event is Thinking Big. And it sounds, well, big. But what it's really about is taking a step back, doing some strategic thinking, looking at your business from a higher level, not just the day-to-day. We're all very busy with our day-to-day issues and day-to-day problems, what this employee is doing, what that employee is working on, getting this project done, getting the other project done, filling this order or that order. But every once in a while, you really need to take a step back, look at it from a higher altitude, and think strategically. Because if you don't know where you're going, as the saying goes, how will you know when you get there? So it's kind of, what do you want your business to look like 3, 4, 5 years down the road? So let me start off with a story. In the summer of 1975, there was an engineer at Kodak by the name of Steve Sasson. And he was given a new assignment. Develop a filmless camera. He put together some parts that he found in Kodak's labs, as you see. Super 8 movie lens, a digital chip, a digital cassette recorder. It took 23 seconds to store each picture on the digital tape. It needed 16 batteries. Try carrying that around. But it was the world's first digital camera. And from December of 1975 through the rest of 1976, Steve went around and demonstrated his new invention for all the top executives at Kodak in their various different offices. And the reaction he got was pretty universal. That is a really cool device. How long will it take to bring it to market? And Steve Sasson, in what can only be called as a bolt of prophecy, said 15 to 20 years. Digital cameras came out early 1990s, 15 to 20 years. And all the executives at Kodak said, that's very nice, but we're not interested right now. 15 to 20 years, come back in 15 years and then we'll talk. Kodak, as everybody in this room hopefully knows, went into bankruptcy, Chapter 11, about 5 years ago. Recently emerged. They are no longer in the photography business. They are no longer in the camera business. And they were beaten to market on digital cameras by just about everyone. Canon, Nikon, Sony, an entertainment company. Everybody beat them. What happened? How did the top executives at the largest photography company in the world get it so wrong? And the answer is simple. Kodak was making piles of cash on film. They didn't want filmless cameras. Kodak had a 70% margin on film. They had pretty much no competition. And they had large piles of cash. So why are they interested in digital cameras? It would wreck their business. But they made a mistake. Kodak's mistake was they didn't stop to think about what their real business was. Kodak's real business, if they had understood it properly, should not have been the camera business or the film business. Kodak, if you look at it more broadly, was actually in the storytelling business. And therefore, what they should have thought about is how do we give our customers ways to tell their stories better, quicker, more enjoyably? These are the things, how do we make it easier for them to tell their stories? But that's not what was on their mind. They thought they were in the camera and film business and sitting on all this cash. And that was the beginning of the end, the rot underneath for Kodak. So we're going to talk a little bit about innovation. The idea that a business needs to constantly evolve, change, and innovate in order to stay current, and even more so in order to stay ahead of its competition. Because you either innovate or you stagnate. Just to give you a few quotes about innovation, which, by the way, people think of innovation, the first thing to think of is technology, computers, anything electronic. Innovation is not a matter of electronics and it's not a matter of technology. Innovation begins here. It's a way of thinking. Steve Jobs, one of the greatest innovators of our time, says innovation distinguishes between a leader and a follower. Bill Gates is quoted as saying, the real risk in business is not doing anything. Someone a little bit older from a previous generation, talking about art, said that without tradition, art is a flock of sheep without a shepherd, but without innovation, it's a corpse. And finally, one of the top business advisors, Peter Drucker, said that innovation is the specific instrument of entrepreneurship. It is the act that endows resources with a new capacity to create wealth. In other words, without innovation, you don't grow, you don't change, you don't create anything new. So, we've spoken about the importance of innovation. But how do you innovate? Where do you go with this now that you know it's important? So, to evolve and to innovate, you first have to define and understand your business. As we mentioned before about Kodak, they didn't quite get what business they were in. Two major examples: the railroad industry. The railroad industry thought they were in the train business. Had they understood they were in the transportation business, they might not have gone three-quarters bankrupt when people came out with horseless carriages, cars, trucks, etc. But when you're in the train business and things come out that make trains more or less obsolete, then you're done. Hollywood studios nearly went under. Many of them did, because they figured they are in the filmmaking and movie business instead of the entertainment business. So when things like VCRs and VHS tapes and DVDs and all of this stuff came out, and the internet, they didn't know what to do with it. So let's take this a step further. Definition and vision. The whole idea of definition and vision is, what's the goal? Where are we going? How do we get there? You need focus. You need to set a direction. And then you start thinking about, how do we go there? What's a better, faster, easier way to do something? The innovation has to fit your goal. It has to be part of your strategy. If you're too broad, you're going to digress. You're going to get off the track and end up doing things that are irrelevant to your business. But if you're too narrow, like Kodak was, then you exclude good ideas, you dismiss them out of hand, and you don't do things that your business may need to do, not just to expand, but even to survive. I'd like to look at some mission statements that I pulled off the internet. And let's talk about these mission statements and how they fit into this concept. One I particularly like, Lego. Lego's mission statement has nothing to do with building blocks. It's to nurture the child in each of us. I think that's really nice. It really gives you a clear understanding of what that company wants to do. And it expands their horizon in a way that allows them to serve not just children, but even adults. Sophisticated type of toys, maybe. Not just building blocks, but anything that brings out that childlike quality, that wanting, that desire to explore something new. The Disney Corporation. To use our imagination to bring happiness to millions of people. It's not the cartoon business, it's not the animation business, it's not even the film business. It's to use imagination to bring happiness to people. Not even just the entertainment business. Merck is in the business of preserving and improving human life, which can take them well beyond pharmaceuticals. Nike, which is much more than a sneaker company, wants to bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world. And obviously they want to make everybody think that you are or can be an athlete, which expands their customer base. But it gives people that feeling of, I can be an athlete if I only use Nike products. Here's one I didn't quite get. Microsoft. We work to help people and businesses throughout the world realize their full potential. Let that sink in for a minute. help people and businesses throughout the world realize their full potential. It almost sounds like they're going into psychology or something. They're going to change your mindset. Nothing about technology, nothing about tools, nothing about how to help you do things better. To me, it sounds way too broad and a little bit confusing, very vague. Another one that's very vague, the Heshy Corporation. Undisputed marketplace leadership. What marketplace? What are you selling? What are you doing? Who are you appealing to? Undisputed marketplace leadership. That could be anything. That could be construction. That could be real estate. That could be clothing. It could be food. It could be transportation. Levi Strauss says, we will market the most appealing and widely worn casual clothing in the world. We will clothe the world. So it's not just about jeans. It's about any type of casual clothing, anything that makes people feel comfortable and feel appealing in the way they wear their casual clothes. Let me give you two that are somewhat related. Two energy companies. Duke says is to create superior value for our customers, employees, communities, and investors through the production, conversion, delivery, and sale of energy and energy services. It's a little bit long-winded, but it's pretty clear, gets the point across. Dynegy is very similar, but they're limiting themselves to the production, transmission, and distribution of electricity, natural gas, and natural gas liquids to customers in the United States. So, first of all, they're limiting themselves to the United States. A company of that size, I would expect, would be looking for something more. And they're talking about electricity and natural gas. What about solar, geothermal, nuclear, any type of new technology beyond electricity and natural gas? Again, somewhat limited. I'll give you one more contrast that's not on the screens, not on the slides. Google has a mission, not their "Don't be evil" motto. That's not their mission statement. Google wants to organize the world's information and make it universally acceptable and useful. And Yahoo wants to connect people to their passions, communities, and the world's knowledge, which is much more limited to search than Google's idea of making things accessible and useful and organizing information. Yahoo just wants to enable you to find it. So having looked at those, let's take a look at what I call the innovation graveyard. Companies that didn't innovate, could have innovated, and suffered for it. Kodak, as we talked about, the railroads, which I mentioned, Yahoo, which came very close to shutting down and sold what was left of the company to Verizon. Blockbuster. They were originally a top innovator. They took the movie industry and turned it upside down. VHS tapes, DVDs, but they weren't prepared for the internet. And Netflix basically put them out of business. There used to be a Blockbuster store every mile and a half. Go find one now. Kmart, Sears, companies that 20 years ago were the top companies in their industry, and today are minor players. On the other hand, innovators. Every innovation list has to start with Apple. Apple took innovation to an entirely new level. They started out producing personal computers. They were the first PCs. The Apple II, then the Mac. But then they moved into consumer products. iPods, iPhones, iPads. Not only that, they took their consumer products and they competed with themselves, not just with the competition. They competed with themselves. They basically replaced the Mac with the iPad and the iPod with the iPhone. And all they did was move to the next stage and try to find new ways to do things better, make it easier, and make the whole process more useful and better for their customers. IBM, which almost ended up on the first list, because they were dead set on mainframes and hardware. And then in the 1990s, when they were about to go bankrupt, hired a man by the name of Lou Gerstner, who turned the company around by focusing on delivering software and services, ways of helping business improve their way of processing information. Target Stores, which is about the only chain that's competed successfully against Walmart by taking inexpensive stock clothing and making it stylish and fashionable and appealing to a whole different mindset among people who are cost conscious. Starbucks turned coffee into a statement of style and elegance. And finally, a company you would not think of as an innovator, Procter & Gamble, a consumer products company. Paper towels, dishwashing liquid, soaps, deodorants. So how is Procter & Gamble an innovator? Procter & Gamble tests all of their new products in mock houses. They build mock houses. They take consumers and they say, here, go live with the product for a month. Use it for a month. Let us know how it works. In an industry where the typical new product success rate is 20%, Procter & Gamble's is 50%. 2.5 times the industry average. So let's go a little further. Let's be practical about this. How do we take this down to our level? How do we innovate? The first thing is, innovation doesn't have to be something totally new. Innovation can be anything that works faster, better, cheaper, more conveniently. A new process, a new idea, a new way of doing things internally. Doesn't even have to be so evident to the outside. But anything that makes your business run better or appeal more to your customer base. Innovation is something that makes a business unique and stand out, whether to its employees, to its customers, to its owners, something that keeps it moving, keeps it fresh. It's a continuous, never-ending, ongoing process. It doesn't mean you do something and that's it. Okay, I innovated. We'll come back next year. It's continuous. It's constantly ongoing. You're constantly examining what you do and how you do it. And how do I change it? How do I make it better? I was at a conference a number of years ago, sponsored by Microsoft. They had a speaker who billed himself as a futurist. These are people who try to predict what the world will look like in the future and how can you be ready for it. I wasn't very impressed with his predictions, but one thing he said stood out in my mind. He said, people say if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I say if it ain't broke, break it. That's a little extreme, granted, but it's an idea of the mindset that you need to have if you're going to innovate. Don't be satisfied with the status quo, because status quo is stagnation. And it's creativity, stepping out of the box. Encourage the people who work for you to disturb the normal. Just because this is the way we've always done it doesn't mean it's the right way to do it. Once heard a story about if you take 5 monkeys, you put them in a cage, you put a flight of steps in the cage, and above the flight of steps, you hang a bunch of bananas. Obviously, the monkeys are going to go for the bananas. The first monkey that goes up to the steps gets sprayed with freezing cold water. I'm sorry, when the monkey goes up the steps, all of the monkeys get sprayed with freezing cold water. After that happens a couple of times, you'll see that any monkey that goes up the steps, the other 4 monkeys will attack him and drag him down, because they don't want to get sprayed with freezing cold water. Next, you take one of the monkeys out and you put in a new monkey. The new monkey is going to see the bananas and he's going to go running up the steps. And the other monkeys are going to attack him even without the water. And he'll have no idea why the other monkeys attacked him. And you repeat the process. You replace each one of the original monkeys with a new monkey. After 1 or 2 tries of climbing the steps and getting attacked, they'll join in the attack. When the new monkey tries to climb the steps, all the monkeys will attack him. Even though there's no more spray of freezing cold water, even though there's no reason not to go up the steps. And that, unfortunately, is how company policy gets made many times. We set it, we forget about it, and we leave it on autopilot. And it just goes. To the point where we have no reason why we did it in the first place, except that that's the way it's always been done around here, so we just keep doing it. One of the major problems with innovating is you're going to find resistance to change. People get into a comfort zone. They like status quo. They like to go back and do the familiar, comfortable things. But if you do that, you'll never innovate. Part of innovation is getting close contact with your clients, your customers. You must understand what they want and what it takes to make them not just happy, but thrilled with your service, with your product. What do they really want from you? And then you try to meet that need. Now, you have to change decisively. Not hastily. You don't jump to decisions. But you don't sit back and waffle for months at a time. You make a decision based on the best available information. You deliberate it. You go ahead and you do it. Understanding that failure is a part of life and a part of growth. Am I ahead? I think I'm ahead of the slide. Here we go. If somebody fails, you don't criticize them for it, because you want to encourage them to try again. You want them to keep coming up with new ideas, and if they get criticized, they're going to end up like those monkeys. They're going to recoil from the thing that got them in trouble, and they won't want to do it again. So what you need to do is, when somebody fails, you sit down with them and you say, let's analyze what happened, what we did wrong, where did we go wrong, how do we learn from this? Failure is something to learn from, not something to criticize. And the more you innovate, the more things are new, fresh, and exciting. People who get into an innovative environment and get used to that feel like there's always something new going on, something fresh, another reason to come to work every day. It's an atmosphere, it's a way of thinking, and it really is an attitude that has to spread through all levels of the organization. You know, all humor is really based on the idea of something unexpected, something fresh and something new. When we have a joke, when we laugh at a joke, it's because something surprised us. It's not what we expected. There's a sense of renewal, of appreciation for things that are new and fresh. And that's what innovation is all about. Keeping things new, keeping them fresh. Working with things, keeping them moving along so that it's not just stagnating. There's a mural on a wall 50 feet high in Zurich. And I believe last year it was in New York as well. The Guggenheim Museum had an exhibition by the artists who made it. This was done by a couple of artists, Swiss artists. Apparently, from what I read, they found this list hanging on the wall of a ceramics factory in Thailand. But when I looked at it, it looked like it was something that was really not as simplistic as it is at first glance, and a lot of good advice. In order to work better, to innovate, you have to keep focused. In order to do that, this list is very helpful. First, do one thing at a time. People like to say, I multitask, I'm very efficient. When you multitask, what you're really doing is switching tasks in midstream. And when you switch in the middle, you haven't done the job right. You lose focus, you lose concentration on what you were doing, you lose attention, and when you have to come back to it, and you have to pick it up again, because you digress to do something else, or think about something else, you're not in the same place you were. Second, know the problem. Don't just look at it superficially. There's what we call hidden data. What's behind the numbers? What's behind the obvious? Dig a little deeper. Really understand what is the problem that has to be fixed. Just because there are more accidents between 6 and 9 p.m. doesn't mean that it's a time of day that accidents occur. There's a reason for it. So if you dig deeper, it's obvious that more people are on the road. 6 to 9 a.m. During rush hour, when there's more cars on the road, there's going to be more accidents. It could be that lighting conditions are not as good. Dig deep. Know what the problem is before you try to solve it. Learn to listen. You ever walk into somebody's office and start talking to them about something, and they're busy writing an email or reading something? Don't worry, I'm listening. I hear you. Go ahead. Besides an appalling lack of respect for the person that's talking to you, there is no way that you are concentrating on what that person is saying properly. Unfortunately, I've been guilty of this myself sometimes, and I look up and I go, could you repeat that? If you have to ask the person to wait till you finish what you're doing, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. They walked in on you in the middle of something. But don't act like you can do two things at the same time. Focus. Concentrate. Stop and think for 2 seconds before you respond, or cut the person off in mid-sentence. Listen. Ask questions. Dig to the fundamentals. Understand the basics. And then you build on the questions to understand, to go deeper and understand more. 5, distinguish sense from nonsense. We get bombarded with so much information on a daily basis. We get more information in one day than previous generations got in a decade. We are constantly bombarded with all kinds of information from all over the place. How much of it is sense and how much of it is nonsense? When you're following the president's tweets every hour and a half, and I voted for him, but there's a lot of nonsense in there. It's all useless stuff. Get to the sense. Get to the things that matter. Accept change as inevitable, because the world is going to change, and if you don't change along with it, you're just going to be left behind. And that's what we've been talking about for the last half hour. 7, admit your mistakes. If you can't admit your mistakes, you can't learn from them. Say it simple. Don't get wordy, convoluted. Dilute it down, distill it down to its simplest essence. When you talk to somebody, there's a saying, keep it simple, stupid. Keep it simple. People will understand you better. They'll be able to follow the instructions. Keep it as simple as possible. 9, be calm. Because when you're not calm, and if you're running the organization, you can bet that your people are not calm. If you're upset or nervous, or worse, angry, you can bet that everybody working for you feels the tension. They're not concentrating on the work. When you call an employee in and rake him over the coals, I tell you now, he's done for the day. You're not getting production out of him for the rest of the day. You can bet on it. And 10, smile. Just smile. It changes the atmosphere. People react differently to someone who's smiling at them. Couple of quick examples from our own practice. We have set up things that firms our size don't dream of. We initiated a tax controversy specialty. We have people who do nothing but deal with problems with the IRS and taxing authorities. Notices, penalties, audits, it's all they do. Typically that's not found in firms our size. That's found in firms much, much bigger. Our slogan is we guide clients on their road to individualized success. We try to look at every client based on what their needs are, what they want. Not a typical accountant's attitude of, let's churn out the tax return, let's churn out the financial statement, let's go to the next person. And we look at not just their financial, but all of their business needs. Tax Revo is another example of innovation. We decided that we're getting to the point where we can't efficiently and effectively serve smaller businesses. So we created a separate division just to do that. It's that process of innovating, of trying to find new ways to do things better and faster and easier. And so, I'm going to close with one more story. Would you say that innovating has anything to do with hunting moose? Let me explain. These 3 hunters charter a plane. They fly up to Alaska, to a lake that they visited the previous year. They land on the lake. Pilot taxis up to the shore, lets the men out, unload their gear, and they say, "See you in a week." Pilot comes back a week later, taxis up to the shore. They load their gear back onto the plane, and they strap a moose to the pontoons. And the pilot says, "Okay, let's go." And the men look at him, "What do you mean, let's go? We've got 2 more moose." And the pilot says, 2 more moose? The plane can't handle the load. There's no way we get out of here with all that weight. I can't take 2 more moose. They get into a very heated discussion. They talk about the carrying capacity of the plane, the temperature, the airlift, the weather, the length of the lake, the weight of the men, the gear, and the moose. And finally, one of the men says, "Listen, last year, we took off from this lake with the same 3 men, the same gear, the same type of plane, the same 3 moose. The only thing that's different this year is the pilot. So you're going to tell me that you can't do this?" So the pilot says, "Okay, you did it last year, we'll do it this year. I don't see it, but we'll do it." They load the moose back onto they load the 2 moose on the plane. They taxi to the far end of the lake, turn the plane around. They get out of the plane, they drag it back into the reeds. They get back into the plane. The pilot starts to rev the engine. The men are hanging out the window, holding onto the trees to get the pilot to build up the engine speed. And finally the pilot says, "Okay, let's go." They let go of the trees. The plane jumps, speeds across the lake, starts to take air, faster and faster, and the plane finally takes off. And the pontoons hit the trees on the other side of the lake. Plane spins, falls end over end, lands in a field beyond the trees, and the moose go flying all over the place. And after about 10 minutes, one of the men wakes up and he goes, Bill, are you here?" And Bill answers, "Joe, is that you?" And Joe says, "Yeah, Bill, where are we?" And Bill says, "About 50 yards further than last year." You don't have to do it all in one shot. You only have to go 50 yards further than you did before. Little by little, incremental improvement. You don't have to have revolution to innovate and to change and to improve and to grow. Thank you all for your time. I hope you enjoyed it.